Thank you for joining us for Archive Dive. I'm Catherine Austin, and I'm the curator for the Texas Archive of the Moving Image, a nonprofit based in Austin, Texas. Over the last 12 years, our organization has partnered with the Office of the Governor's Texas Film Commission to bring old films and videotapes back to life. Our Texas Film Roundup program provides Texans with free digitization services for their films and videotapes, but more importantly, preserves and shares their uniquely Texas stories via our website, texasarchive.org. There you can watch more than 5,000 videos contributed by individuals and institutions from across the state. Archive Dive highlights the people behind the collections on view at texasarchive.org. With support from the Society for Southwest Archivists, we will be chatting with contributors about their materials and discovering more information about those moving images and the Texans that made them. Tonight, we will be watching footage from the Carman News and Ads collection. Contributor CK Carman began her professional career in broadcasting, working as a reporter for KTVV, now KXAN, in Austin, as well as a producer and host for KUT Radio. In 1982, she co-founded MQ&C Advertising and Marketing, promoting various Texas businesses and government agencies. We are talking to CK via Zoom. Good evening, CK.
Hello. How are you?
Pretty great. How are you doing?
Suffering through Texas allergies, but all right otherwise.
It's that time of year. What can you tell us about the materials you shared with Tammy for the Texas Film Roundup?
Well, generally speaking, I have boxes and boxes and boxes from both my earlier news career at KXAN, which formerly was KTVV when I worked there, the NBC affiliate here in Austin, and then boxes and boxes and boxes more of the ads I produced with 32 years of experience at my ad agency that I created in 1982. So I just had them stored, knowing someday I'm going to do something with them. And then I heard about the Tammy project, if you will, on KUT, and it's like, oh my gosh, that could be a perfect situation for me because I have so many videotapes of different formats. Mm-hmm. And so I was just so happy that you guys offered that. It's a service, essentially, but yeah, so that's how I met you folks.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine you didn't have the equipment to play these tapes anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I have a VHS somewhere and maybe a CD or DVD player, but no, because so many of the tapes were beta masters, if you will, mm-hmm. The Sony professional beta broadcast tape format. No, nobody has those except for production companies and television stations and news.
Mm-hmm. And they're hard for us to find still now, too. But before we get started, I just wanted to tell the audience that both CK and Team Tammy are monitoring the comment section, so feel free to ask questions. But we're going to begin this evening's program with a 1978 segment you produced at KTVV for NBC News about the emerging market for home video recorders. Let's roll the clip.
To many home viewers, television is an extremely fascinating business, yet one that doesn't always offer to the public what it would like to see when it would like to see it. So some of that public, at least those who can afford to, are getting into the television programming business themselves by buying home video recorders. There are lots of brands on the market, but there are only two genetic systems, the Beta system and the VHS format. Sony makes the Betamax, while the VHS system is sold by RCA, Panasonic, JVC, and Curtis Mathis. On layman terms, the basic differences between the two is that the VHS is smaller and offers up to 4 hours of tape time, whereas the Beta system only gives you 3 hours, but with better quality, as some contend, but others think the VHS is better.
It's very similar to the difference between 8-tracks and cassettes in the audio industry. We've seen a big shift away from the 8-track and into the cassette because it gives a better quality of sound. For the same reason, the VHS does give a better picture quality.
And if the home video recorders aren't enough to amaze you, and they should be, there are more electronic toys where they came from. How about stereo football viewed on twin large-screen televisions? If you don't like what's on the networks, you can do it yourself with a portable mini-cam to go with your home recorder. Of course, TV isn't the only area expanding. The audio gadgetry is impressive with heat-sensitive controls, and if that's not enough, just wait. In January, the electronic whizzes from Japan will put out a video disc system that works with a laser beam instead of a regular needle. Cynthia Carman for NBC News in Austin.
So what attracted you to broadcast journalism? Didn't you studied journalism at UT, didn't you?
Yes, I actually graduated with a bachelor's of journalism, which I don't think is a very common degree. But I was, I guess, early college in the world of Watergate. You've all read about it. So, I mean, that just broke open the whole concept of professional journalists and what they could do and the effect on the world and the presidency and the country, etc. So that was quite inspiring. And Jane Pauley had gone to the Today Show following Barbara Walters. Barbara Walters was the first female on, I believe, any news show whatsoever. And of course, when she went on the Today Show, she had to share with a male co-anchor. But anyway, I was more aligned with Jane Pauley. And so the Watergate process with Woodward and Bernstein, and then TV news opening to women, or radio, or the world actually opening to women more so than it had been. I was inspired.
Watergate's a pretty good inspiration, that's for sure. Did you go right to KTVB out of college?
Well, I took an indirect route because I went to a couple of different colleges. So my last 2 years were at UT when I graduated. And no, my first job was at a radio station here that is, I think it's Bob 103 now. You know, radio stations change call letters and formats and owners like with the wind. But it was KCSW. And the radio station studio was out where the broadcast equipment was in the tower. So I had to get up. And of course, they don't put new people on during prime time, shall we say. So I was still in college, and I would finish whatever my classes were. I would lay down for a nap for about an hour, and then I would have to wake up around 11 p.m. to get in the car and drive to essentially Buda, which is where the turnoff road was, to go to this field where the studio and the transmitter was. And yeah, we played records. So I was a DJ, like not the kind of DJs we are all familiar with right now these days. But and then apparently somebody, the news director, I guess it would have been, with KXAN or KTVV at the time. I don't know why, heard me something and wanted me to come in to interview to be a news reporter.
Oh, wow.
You know, I was ready to be, so I got the gig.
And you were interested in doing this sort of stand-up news reporter?
Well, I mean,
being a producer or story editor? Or...
It's the entry point. It's, you know, kind of like working at a restaurant. You got to be a busboy first or whatever.
Right.
So I was a general assignments reporter. So every day I went in and the news director said, here's your assignment. And it could be a parade. It could be a fire. Somebody, I remember one of the early stories I had to do was somebody was hit on the upper deck, which was pretty new at the time, of I-35. And so I had to go cover that. And I remember being astonished. They had put the body in the ambulance, and the person unfortunately had died. But his shoes were still on I-35. And I asked, I said, yeah, he got knocked out of his shoes. His body was thrown 40 feet from his shoes. It's like, oh my God. So anyway, but you know, some stories were fun and some were just, you know, whatever was going on at that time, at that moment. And I also got to I did cover the Capitol, the Texas Capitol for a while. So I went to a lot of boring press conferences.
A lot of Texas legislature proceedings.
Yeah.
But Well, our next segment, which is also from 1978, is probably one of the more fun ones, I'd say, because you're reporting on Austin's annual Run for Your Life marathon and some of its high-profile participants. And the footage also includes a few humorous outtakes. Let's roll the clip.
As local columnist Townsend Miller fired the starting pistol, they were off. They were running for everyone in this Run for Your Life race, since all the proceeds are going to help fight cancer. Dr. John Stalin, head of the foundation. What are you working on right now as far as cancer research?
Two big projects, two that we think are going to show a lot of promise, and that is effects of heat on cancer cells. And then we've got a new drug, thymidine, that we're very, very excited about.
One of the entrants in the race was FM 98's disc jockey, Marty Manning, who thought he had the race all wrapped up.
I'm going to win this race by hook or by crook or by shortcut.
Well, Marty's secret weapon didn't quite work out as he had planned. Willie didn't come out first either, but he wasn't any worse for the wear.
Are you tired, Willie? No, I was while ago.
So everyone's trying to get in on the act, even Tess here. But it's all for a great cause, to beat cancer. 30s. I'm Cynthia Carman for 36 Eyewitness News. She's eating my foot. I need that foot. No, don't get the foot. She's eating my hand. Oh, she's eating my face.
You want to know, like, why was there an elephant at the marathon? That's what I want to know. Why was Tess there?
Well, it was, kind of a carnival atmosphere, and
Sure.
I don't remember exactly why there was an elephant there. I mean, the circus wasn't in town, and I don't know whose idea it was really for me to stand there next to the elephant, but it was in that type of story. It was just me and a cameraman, so it's not like we had a producer and an audio person. It was just the two of us. So I'm going to blame it on my cameraman.
Well, the cameraman's fault. I was going to even ask you about it, about how are segments like this produced when you're not at the studio? So, like, what equipment are you having to bring? Because obviously the technology for that has changed quite a bit too.
Well, we were lucky because news had transferred into the world of video. So I mean, not a couple of years before I was working in the business, they were shooting film. And so that film had to be rushed back and processed. Yeah, crazy. I don't even know how they did that. But so our cameras were like big video cameras. And you could fit it on your shoulder. And then a microphone, which was, tethered with a wire, or a handheld. You had to kind of produce it in your head as you did it. I mean, you obviously had to have a concept. I mean, unless you were going to a fire and you didn't have any concept of what you were going to get when you got there. Something like this, I had an idea. So it was up to me. It was me. I would be my own producer in that case, and I would have decided who to interview. Of course, it would have been based on who was there that could be interviewed and who would want to be interviewed. And so I don't know, the elephant, Tyrone, the cameraman, I'm going to blame it on him. But that was, well, anyway, and then I would come back and edit it. So it was all from the beginning to the end. So I would edit it all and do any voiceover and grab that beta tape and then go hand it to the engineers, who would shove it in a player back in the control room.
And what was sort of the turnaround time between shooting it, editing it, and then delivering it?
I mean, it could be an hour.
Oh, literally. Wow.
I mean, it depends on, that was probably earlier in the day, so that was probably like a 10 a.m. thing. So the deadline would have been, they give you a time frame, like they say, well, you're going to have 1 minute and 45 seconds. So you got to chop it down to 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Right.
Not 1 minute and 50 seconds. So I might have had, a few hours to do that. But if, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something happens and you have to run out there and shoot it and do a stand up and try to find somebody to interview, you might have an hour to
Wow.
get back and put it together and edit it and hand it off. And there were a few times, Broadcast News, if anyone remembers that movie, there's a couple of scenes from that movie where running, jumping over things and under things. One of the women was trying to get a tape into the control room because it was about to roll within, like 47 seconds. And one of the stories, I don't remember which one, but I was running down the hall to just burst through the door of the control room, and it's like in the machine. And then it was introduced by the anchor out in the studio, and he pushed the button and it played. I mean, it was like boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
And obviously, my colleagues that do the digitization would be displeased with me if I also didn't point out that we're able to digitize this tape, but it's already showing signs of degradation with discoloration a little bit and the static, and it just is because tape is more prone to degradation than film is, even because that magnetic sound just deteriorates real quick. So
Yeah.
it's good that we were able to digitize your tapes, because who knows how much longer they'd even be playable.
And I was guilty of probably improperly storing it, because some of those boxes, the tapes have been in a garage, but I finally put them in a temperature controlled storage unit, so that probably gave them a little more shelf life.
Yeah, Texas weather is not conducive to film and videotape preservation. That's
Or human life, really.
that's true too. With our next segment, we're going to transition to your career in advertising with footage capturing the making of an upbeat commercial for Tris Amigos. Let's roll the clip.
How's my time? Everything okay? Cool.
Look at that.
Delicious enchiladas, that's one way to go to Tres Amigos. For the finest margaritas and pretty señoritas, Tres Amigos. For the best service in town, it's your fiesta, Tres Amigos. So let's all go eat, Carlos will treat at Tres Amigos.
Yeah, more of the up instead of up and down and around. This looks better.
And we're speeding.
Playback, rolling.
For delicious enchiladas.
I think this is interesting, a pretty interesting contrast with what you were just saying about having maybe an hour to shoot and edit a story for broadcast news. But here we have, presumably you're spending a whole day in a studio to produce maybe a 30-second commercial that can just be take after take after take of the same lines.
Yes, and actually, the work starts much farther back than that, because the work
Right.
is having the client and then getting a concept. Either we internally came up with a concept and write the script, or sometimes would hire a freelance, a creative person. And then really the hard part was convincing the client that this was a great idea. And this is how much it will cost, and it'll be worth it. So that was the hard part. The production, actually, the shooting, and you have to go through the casting process, and if there's a location, you have to do the location. All of those elements, it's just like making a mini film, like a 30-second film, and many moving parts and many people, and then there's judgment calls. It's like, I didn't quite like the way you emphasized that second word, so let's do 13 more times. And then we also, the jingle had to be created, so that had to be written and had to be produced, so we could play it back, so he could sing to it. And then after that's done, and it could be a day, it could be 2 days in some cases, then you go into post-production, and then you go into a dark studio where you sit for hours and you tell an engineer that cut, not that cut, And so it's a long process.
Now, what took you from, broadcast news and then radio, and I know you were working in radio for several years, to then advertising? How'd you get into advertising?
The original partners of mine, Tom Quarles and Ben Morris and me, CK Carman. So Morris, Quarles, Carman, MUNC was the name of the company. Those two guys were working at radio stations, and they were making, in radio, when you work at radio, when you get off the air from your show, part of your job is then you have to go record a commercial, because a lot of the clients, they're not going to be able to afford, or don't want to afford in some cases, to pay a production company to produce a fancy jingle or radio commercial. They just want a DJ to read it. So they were doing that. So they were producing these local commercials. At that point, actually, I had left TV news and I was doing a jazz show. Yeah, that was a career change. On public radio at KUT. And the community of radio, well, broadcasting in general, folks in Austin was much, much smaller, because there were many fewer, if that's the right thing to say, fewer radio stations and TV stations than there are now. So we were a smaller community and everybody knew everybody. And so they contacted me and said, hey, we need a female voice on some of our radio commercials, because we're going to start making them and selling them to the clients, and we can make better money that way. And I said, okay. And so I became the female voice. And then one day we were sitting having brunch and said, let's put on an ad agency. Then we can make some real money. Because the real money is not in the production of a radio commercial or even a TV commercial. The real money is in the media buy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Obviously, what's a Super Bowl ad cost? $2 million.
Right.
Local radio wasn't obviously that high, but yeah, then we just said, okay, we'll make a radio station. We'll make a ad agency, and we'll start making better quality radio spots for our clients. And one of the partners, Ben, was still living at home with his parents. They were both working part-time, so it wasn't like they were making the big bucks. And we would go to his parents' extra bedroom and go in the closet where the acoustics were good, in between the clothes. And that's where we would record the commercials.
I think we've just come full circle back to that, with plenty of people doing their recording for radio in their closets again, since they're working from home. But I also read an old article in the Austin Business Journal that was talking about MQNC, and how there were plenty of clients that didn't anticipate a woman being a co-founder and partner in this advertising firm, even in the 80s. But
that was, it was still, there was an assumption that I had a romantic relationship with one of these two other partners, and that's not the case at all. So yeah.
You're the assistant or a junior partner that they brought on. It's like, no, CK helped found this company.
I think that still lives in people's heads, even 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But let's see some finished commercials. We saw some raw footage of one, but we have some finished commercials as well from your collection. So next we have a pair produced by MQNC Advertising in the 1990s. Let's roll the clip.
For over 50 years, the people of Austin have been coming to Green Pastures for everything from romantic evenings to family dinners to big celebrations. Green Pastures is the place where memories are made. Green Pastures for lunch, dinner, and Sunday buffet.
What would you do if your boss didn't give you all of your paycheck?
We couldn't make our car payment.
I wouldn't be able to pay for all these groceries.
I probably couldn't pay all my bills.
If you think you're not being paid for the work you've done, there is someone who can help. Call the Labor Law Department at the Texas Employment Commission at 1-800-TEC-WAGE. So the next time you don't get paid right, don't get mad. Get help from the Texas Employment Commission at 1-800-TEC-WAGE.
And that's you in the second commercial, right?
Yes, that would be me sporting a perm.
Perfect. How did it feel to be back in front of the camera again?
Well, I mean, I was, I'll just say multi-talented in the sense that Green Pastures ad, that was my voiceover, in fact. And I did a lot of voiceover work, not only for my own clients and agency, but other folks would hire me too. And even in the Green Pastures, I believe there at the beginning, there's a couple walking away from the camera into the restaurant. That was me on the left, the girl. Because again, with clients, sometimes the budget's tight, almost always, especially local. So we didn't get to hire, and we didn't really need to hire professional talent for those commercials. That one commercial especially, because we volunteered, or like the people who were in the commercials shown eating, they were employees of the restaurant. You know, they were thrilled. Oh, we're going to be in a TV commercial. So they were thrilled with that. So that was a relatively easy. I think that was a real wedding too, with a real judge. And we said, "Do you mind if we
can we just film here right now?"
Yeah. So that worked out well. The TEC commercial is, as I spoke about earlier, convincing the client was frequently the hardest part. Well, we had designed and actually shot and produced a complete 30-second commercial for the Texas Employment Commission, which is now, I think, Texas Workforce. Mm-hmm. And it was a kind of funny. We had these kind of characters. Like there was one girl who was supposed to be like an airhead, and the same question, what would you do if you didn't get all your pay from your boss? It's like, I don't know, call my hairdresser. And I forgot the other two. I think we had a man dressed up like a woman too. Anyway, they didn't like it. And it was like, oh, it would have been great. Because a lot of clients especially are nervous, especially if it's a commercial, and this being a state agency, they were a little more conservative, and they knew that they'd have to get it approved by higher ups, and higher ups wouldn't have that kind of a sense of humor. So we shot the very straightforward commercial you saw, and actually those people we used, I think we did pay them $50 or something. So that quote, they were quote professionals, and I didn't get paid, of course. Took one for the team. Oh, and I was going to mention it on the Green Pastures. You might have noticed it was a lot shorter. It was 15 seconds because we started. Generally, a TV commercial is 30 seconds. I mean, if you get a minute-long commercial, that's really long. And anything longer than that's crazy. But we kind of started, or invented, if you will, at least locally, running 15-second commercials. So we would buy 30-second time, split it. And so the commercial block between the end of whatever that program was and before the next program started again, in that spot block, we would run a 15-second commercial at the beginning, then there might be a couple of 3 commercials in between, and then we'd run the same commercial at the end, bookend. And it had like this double impact. It's like, wait, I just saw that. And so, you know, the theory was it made a greater impression on the viewer. And I think it did. So,
what markets were you usually buying into? Was it just Austin or Texas or even national? Or
well, certainly when we started, it was only Austin. And like we handled Katz's for a long time. Katz's Deli, which the slogan was Katz's never closes. Of course, they've been out of business now, I don't know, 15 years or something. But then the son of Mark Katz, the owner of the Katz's in Austin, he started a restaurant, Katz's in Houston. So then we started buying the Houston market. So we picked up folks, and so we would run a few of the San Antonio, Houston, but Texas, until we landed our first big national client, which was Palm Harbor Homes, and prefab homes, sometimes called trailers. And they were national. And then Sport Clips also. Ironically, Sport Clips, the hair salon for men, started in Georgetown. So even though it started in Texas, it became national.
Right.
So we grew with them, and so we started buying nationally.
Wow. But so our final segment this evening features a trio of commercials from 2000. Let's roll the clip.
We're so busy.
This?
Anyway, I can't leave your hair.
Hello? I'd like to, eat. Slow.
Think no one would put up with service like this? Well, you do. Every day. From your internet provider.
Whatever.
Better service, better technology, better price. BetterGetTexas.net.
Don't know much about technology. Most computers are a mystery to me. Need to learn some trigonometry. Wish I listened in geography. But it's a world of opportunity. I can learn it all at ACC. What a wonderful life it will be.
Tammy loves the Serranos one, obviously, especially because the cameo from Cactus Pryor there at the end. But I also love the first one because it looks like the opening of a Britney Spears music video. It has that early 2000s quality, you know.
Were you talking about the graphic one with MQNC or the
with the Texas.net one? Walking into the diner. It seems very.
Well, that was way pre-Britney. Britney was, still in diapers when that was shot. That commercial, I don't know if it was, no, it wasn't the most expensive we did, but it was pretty up there. We had the budget for the Texas.net, which was an early internet provider back when everyone was still doing dial-up.
It was out of San Antonio, I've learned.
Well, the owners they eventually came to Austin because they were in Austin when we were working with them. But this whole internet thing was like, oh, okay, serious, and it's not just a fluke. But anyway, I don't remember what the budget was, but it was probably $20,000.
Wow.
Which, today it'd be $100,000 easily. And we went to Dallas because we had a location scout who found this diner, and we hired like a major national award-winning director and cinematographer, and it was shot on film, which is always more expensive, but it looks better always. And all the people there were paid actors. So everything in that shoot was expensive compared to some of the like the Green Pastures commercial. And I think we shot it for 2 days. I think it was over a period. And then editing took probably at least 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know. No, I love that we started with, you reporting in the 70s about the introduction of VHS and beta tape. And we'll end with the sort of advent of the internet and the World Wide Web. So you spanned the gamut of technology advances.
And now we're on Zoom, so yeah.
Right, exactly. Did MQNC have sort of any policy about preserving your productions, or was it sort of just get them in the can, if you will, and deliver them to the clients, and then preserving them was more of a personal choice?
Well, I mean, one of the methods of preservation, if you will, is we would always at least transfer them to some collective format as demo tapes, demonstration tapes, because that's what we would use to bring in a new client. But the original masters, because after you have edited it all down, well, there's the master that is the raw footage that was shot, and then after it's all produced and edited down to the actual 30-second or 15-second commercial, that master then is used to run off dubs, as they're called, which I guess stands for duplications. I don't know how and those we would send out to all the TV stations. So those are like at least second and sometimes third generation. But the video value still held in that case. And then we took the masters and stored them in Iron Mountain, specifically in Iron Mountain. So they were in a place that was protected from apparently nuclear holocaust.
That'll do it. But how did you sort of curate your own personal collection, which is what you brought to Tammy?
Haphazardly would be that. When my partner and I decided to retire, and so I sold him my half of the company, 51% actually, and because I was more the creative director and more interested in the production values and creative aspects, he was the media buyer, he was the number cruncher. So when we were leaving the office, I just started grabbing tapes because I think that he literally wouldn't have wanted them, and they were just literally thrown in boxes. So I hate to say that.
I mean, I'd say that happens a lot, especially with the local news collections, where the station may not care at all about preserving them. But so many of the local news collections Tammy has received is because of people that worked at a station for a period of time and held on to the things that they were a part of, and that obviously meant a whole lot to them, and then brought them to us.
Yeah, those tapes that I brought and I've saved, that's the only place they exist. Those tapes were trash. Well, actually, they weren't trash. They were reused. They were re-recorded over.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
They're long gone. So whatever I saved was what is saved. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's a process that goes back to the beginning of cinema, of just melting down film stock for silver and stuff. But which really sort of brings me to my last question, which I wanted to ask to wrap up: of what value do you see then in preserving local television news and commercials like these?
Good question. I mean, besides the memories it brings to the individuals involved, it's a good way to kind of see where we are now versus where we were, and especially some of the news, some of the things. I remember there was a story that I did about the Chinese. The ambassador was coming to Austin, to talk with the governor, I guess, and some of the issues that were in that story were comparable to kind of some of the issues we're talking about now. So it shows you both how far we have come, certainly technically, from those old days, like when we had to dial a phone with our finger and go around the dial, hence the term dial a phone, and to where we are now. But in many cases, especially news, I would say it also shows how far maybe we haven't really progressed, because some of those issues are still nipping at our heels and still being dealt with today.
That's for sure. I certainly have had that observation myself, looking at news going back to the 60s and earlier. But thank you so much, CK. We're so grateful that you shared your collection with us and with all of Texas and the world through our Texas Film Roundup program. And we're also so lucky that you had the time and were willing to volunteer your time to talk to us about a few of your materials tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate it. And this has been fun.
Oh, great. I also want to thank the Society of Southwest Archivists for their support in making Archive Guide possible. And I will say to the audience that if you enjoy learning about these films, please consider sending us a tip. We take donations via texasarchive.org/support us, or you can text Texas Archive to 44321. Thank you, CK.
Well,